Hey everybody, so my name is LaPrecious and welcome to my YouTube channel known as Let's Talk with LaPrecious. So I decided to do a response video to Shaw the Great, who commented on my Medium video that I did on Dino, known as Kevin Carner from the popular 90s group Htown. So I pretty much did a reading on him to pretty much see where his soul was, what he had to say about a lot of things that fans have been curious about and what they wanted to know and what they wanted to, see as far as his personality, who he was, and what he was like. And I did this off camera after I did the video because I really wanted to see if Dino had confirmed or that Dino agreed with everything that was said in the video. And yes, Dino agreed to everything that was said in his Medium video. One thing I can say is that Dino had a very beautiful soul. He had a very beautiful voice as well as a beautiful body. Because that's somebody you can honestly say that God took time when he made him, because that's how fine he was. But on the somber side, Dino's soul was really sad around the time of his death. Like his momentum really started picking up, his hopes had picked up, his enthusiasm about life had picked up, but he was prepared for death because it was his time to die at the time that he did die back in January, back in 2002 when he died. Because I remember doing a reading in the mediumship video, and I pulled on what was going on, what were his thoughts, and what led him to believe this, and it simply said that he was at peace with God and he was okay with the fact that his time was almost up here on earth, which it was. And he confirmed it in a song called The Day That I Die. And one thing I want to say is that not only did Dino have a beautiful soul, a beautiful body, and a voice, but the sadness that I felt within his soul, because his soul actually lingered with me for about 2 days. And his soul has finally, rested and it's at peace right now. But Dino's soul and his spirit was very crushed, and it was very sad and somber when he went through the things that he did in the music industry. Because Dino, when I actually did the confirmation reading with him after I did that mediumship video, Dino was heavily taken advantage of financially, spiritually, emotionally, whatever you could think of. He went through a lot of things in his life and in his career when he was dealing with that financial woe and musical woe and just trying to figure out like what's selling, what's not, like why is my stuff not being put out? And why is my career not going anywhere, when I'm trying to do all this stuff on my own? Because Dino was not only taking advantage of spiritually but financially as well, because what popped up in the reading was that people were blocking him. People was blocking his music from getting out, especially his solo music. People were blocking him from making deals, getting deals, from advancing his career. People were hindering him, blocking him, trying to stop him, doubting him, and just saying that, oh, you're going to be nothing without Htown. You're going to be Htown for the rest of your life. You're not going to grow. You're not going to go far. You're not going to go any further than this. And it crushed him and it saddened him and it made him, and become in disbelief and just give up on life. Because one thing I will say, from listening to Dino's music, as far as his solo stuff, he could have gone so far. From my research that he did, not research that he did, but from the research that I did on Htown's music, everybody knows Knocking the Boots. Somebody rocking, knocking the boots. Give me some good love. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I don't like that song that much. I know that's their most popular song in the world. But when you look at H-Town's catalog, in my opinion, there are other songs that are a lot better than that I like. Because the songs that came out in that era of Knocking the Boots was Backseat, No Sheets. I love the vibe, the song, and the 90s sway that everybody was doing in that. Like, I love that song. Like, and it's just so like, dun, 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 dun. It just makes you feel happy and just like so fresh and so free, like that 90s summertime groove, going to cookouts and kickbacks and college parties and stuff when life was just so easy and carefree. Like, I love the vibe of that song. It's such a positive song and everything. I felt like that song should have been big. Another song that they have out that's kind of downplayed is Take It Slow. I love their spin on how women really want to be, seduced and taken care of and whatnot before they get to that sex phase and foreplay. And then what's another song that they did I was listening to? A Thin Line Between Love and Hate. I love that one. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I never knew that there was Htown singing that song. I didn't. Because I really do feel like Dino and I had a spiritual connection because I've been going through a lot of stuff in my life lately, and I don't want to reveal that on my YouTube channel. I know in a lot of my videos I talk about my personal life and my struggles and whatnot, but I've learned to be a bit more discreet and secretive about that as a way of saving my soul and protecting my heart and guarding, my spirits and everything, because I just feel like it's not good to let people know the ins and outs of your energy and where you are, because you can make yourself vulnerable for people throwing spiritual attacks at you and whatnot. So I'm not going to reveal that on the video. But I believe that over the weekend, I was up late at night looking through my TikToks and scrolling through different videos of my favorites and listening to different clips. And I came across Dino's, video where a fan had did like a picture compilation of like Dino throughout the years, and his glow up was everything. When it came to Dino, like you don't even see like puberty like this anymore, because it's just so sad that how we've lost our innocence as a generation and as a society. Because do y'all remember like in the 90s, early 2000s, and even in the 80s too? So you remember how some people had like their ugly duckling phase where they may have been a little fat or a little chubby or they had bad acne, but when they hit puberty at like 11, 12, 13 years old, especially the guys, it's like they lost the baby weight and they had a chisel face, and they started getting cute, and then girls started being with them, and then like with the girls, they learned about like acne medicine or like the pills or doing the acne treatments and stuff, and eating healthy, losing weight, and their bodies would fill out and then they would be more attractive. Like Dino, he had that glow up, because it's funny how in his knocking the boots era, he was like 17, 18 years old in that era. And then when he got to like the mid 90s, like with the Thin Line Between Love and Hate, he had like the little texturizer in his hair. He started being more naked and more bare, and showing more chest and grinding and everything. Like his glow up was everything. He went from being this cute little teenager to singing Knocking the Boots with the baggy jeans and the Timberlands to being like this just like this sex symbol and everything. Like his glow up was everything. And I mean, that just shows you the times, because back then, when it came to our youth, whether you were a teenager or a young adult or like late teen, whatever, you weren't made to grow up fast. And it's like even if you was grown, had kids young or whatever, you were allowed to like bask in your youth. Because it's like my grandma's generation back then in the 90s and stuff, they always told us to like, well, you better be glad that you're young now, because when you get old, you're going to wish you was young then. And it's true, because back then in the 90s, the early 2000s, like being a kid, being a teenager stuff, it was fun. You didn't have to worry about bills. You'd have to worry about babies and affording a place to stay and all of that, because the economy was so much better back then and there wasn't a lot of stress. And people, especially people of color, we were allowed to be ourselves. Like black people, even though we may have been a little hood or whatever, we could still have fun and be ourselves and have our own stories and dialects and stuff, and not be so bashed or gentrified or whitewashed and whatnot. And even Hispanics and stuff, we were just allowed to be free and just be ourselves and to just culturally grow and develop. And it's like when we were young, my grandma's generation and even my mom's to an extent, they instilled in us to not only be young and youthful, but to invest in our gifts and our talents, because you could tell that Dino had a very Christian upbringing, because you hear the church and God and Christ and the Holy Spirit all through his vocal cords when he sung on those songs. And a lot of 90s kids, especially the black ones, we were raised in church. Like a lot of our foundation came from the church, and a lot of our teachings and upbringings and a lot of our life lessons and stuff came from church. And you know, a lot of us came from, you know, strict backgrounds where you couldn't cuss, couldn't listen to secular music on Sundays, had to wear white on the first Sunday due to communion and, you know, all that type of stuff. But it's like back then in church, they taught us how to use God. And I feel like and I feel like, and you know, we go through right now, this generation has gone through the spiritual awakening where a lot of us are not as church based anymore. But it just seems like in church back then, they taught us how to use the gifts that God gave us. Because, you know, yeah, we were all made in God's, you know, creation. We were all made by God's hands, fingers, and his spirit or whatever made in his image. But we were taught that if God gave you the gift to sing, to paint, dance, rap, draw, whatever, you did it. And it could be used in so many different ways. And as long as it made you money and blessed you and whatnot, then that's what you were supposed to be doing. And the church back then was a place where you could express your talents. Like if you couldn't do it in church, you did it in school, you did it at the neighborhood parks, recreation centers, and all that. Like that era. And I feel like this is why the 90s and early 2000s is so revered, because creativity was just so enforced back then. And being young and being gifted and youthful and just being free was just so like admired and pushed and supported back then. And I'm not saying that it's not right now, because social media has been a wonderful help and a wonderful thing, you know, in this day and age with creativity. But I just feel like the home training is not there anymore. And it's like the backing from the elders and the parents is not there anymore, and teaching the youth on how to be young and how to value be young, and that you don't necessarily need to be grown, or you don't have to be grown at 12 and 13 years old to feel like somebody. It's like back then in the 90s, early 2000s, you could be who you were and still be young and still flourish and grow and still get everything you needed to know. So that's what I love about the 90s. And you could tell with Dino, he had that. Like he just had so much force and he just had so much strength in his voice, so much power. And his voice was really anointed. Like most people in the comments, anybody, when they hear Dino's voice, they hear the anointing, and he had it. He had it. He was anointed. And so you could tell like he had a really good glow up from being like knocking the boots till Thin Line Between Love and Hate and Take It Slow. And what's another one that they did? I'm trying to think of it. Gosh, I've been listening to all their music and stuff, and I could just see it and hear it. But yeah. So with Dino, as far as the confirmation reading I did off camera, he agreed with a lot of the things that was said, and I felt his energy. His energy was heartbreaking, like around that period in the late 90s up until he died, when a lot of stuff wasn't working out for him because he was heavily depressed and he was, you know, drinking, sleeping all the time, not eating. And he did have a fiance and whatnot, and she was there helping him and supporting him and if you actually listen to some of his solo work that was released, because they said at the time his solo stuff, you know, didn't get released, and it wasn't, because I read in the reading that they held on to a lot of his stuff where he couldn't get none of it out. And when you hear the music, I mean, it was good. Like, it wasn't like it was some whack made stuff that he just mixed up saying this is the new me or whatever. He also wanted to be a rapper because his rap name was Dino Labarachi, a Dino Labarucci, you know, Labarachi, you know, that was gonna be his rap name. And he got a song with Shazam called Drop 'em Spread 'em, and his rap his rap on there is so good. Like, you know, it sounds like he could have had a rap career, a solid rap career, or he could have went down that lane, because it's sad how they just held up his music and his legacy, because what Dino had was God given. That was a God given talent. And he really was chosen to be the forefront or the voice of Htown. Like, yeah, GI, they were good and Shazam was good, but Dino, he had that gift. He had that it factor. And I feel like just like Omarion got the chance when he went solo from B2K, Marcus Houston got the chance from when he was in Immature and IMX, Beyonce, Dino should have got that same chance and that opportunity to really flourish and thrive as a soloist, and he didn't. Because when I hear his EP, It only got 4 songs. They only released like 4 songs from the EP or whatever solo music he had. It was good. And my thing is like Dino could have went down so many lanes and routes of music that is crazy because hearing his voice, like a lot of people say he has a voice like no other, but when I listen to him sing, he sounds like Anthony Hamilton. He sounds like one of the guys from Rough Ends. You know, Rough Ends was that group that made that song. All I need to say is that I wanted to be with you, girl. I know you waited so long for someone to love you, baby. You've been waiting for. Da, 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 da. Like he sounds just like them, and with his voice and with his spirit and with that soul factor and whatnot, he not only could have been a successful solo artist in R&B, but he also could have went down that neo soul. He could have went down like that neo soul classical R&B or like that conscious woke R&B that people like Jill Scott, Lauryn Hill, Music Soul Child, Anthony Hamilton, Common, Floetry, like he could have went down that route. He could have went down that poetic, soulful, spiritual like type of R&B that was hot at the time because neo soul with NDRE, Jill Scott, Music Soul Child, Common, Erica Badu, that was real big in the late 90s to early 2000s. And Dino was sliding out from Htown into his own thing, and he would have perfectly fit in that mix. And plus, by him being a Texas boy, you know, being from Houston, because a lot of them, you know, they played up with that countryness, like Anthony Hamilton. And you know how they used to do the videos and like the juke joints and then like um the speakeasies, or they would do videos in farms and stuff like that. I could really see Dino doing some stuff like that. Like him being this country boy from like Texas and everything and singing his heart out about his lost love or lost soul or, you know, that energy. Like he could have really had that. And then I could have also seen him going into gospel too. Because like I said, he often referenced God, and even in that Natural Woman song, Natural Woman in and out. And then when he got to that part, he said, God said, and every man, you know, he got down to his preacher voice when he did that. But you could tell he was so full of the Lord and so full of God and all of his teachers and everything, and the way that he sung and the way that he referenced women. And I like the fact how Dino wasn't a discriminatory person against women, because we talk about how a lot of the black artists and celebrities downplay and diss black women so much. Dino was somebody that expressed his love and interest in all women and not just black women, because his baby mama, you know, the mother of the his baby mama, the woman that he has his daughter Kasia Rose by. Kasia Rose, she's a singer. I've heard her voice. She can't sing like her daddy, but she got her own voice and it sounds really good. And she does look like Dino because she has his nose and his face and likeness and everything. So that's Dino's baby. But with Dino, because his first baby mama was a white woman that he had his daughter Kasia Rose by, and he dedicated the album Ladies Edition that came out in like 97 that has a song called Take It Slow on it and Natural Woman. I believe he dedicated that album to the woman who was murdered allegedly by O.J. Simpson back then. He also dedicated it to all women. And there were a lot of good songs on that album. There's also a song on there called Julie Rain that he said is dedicated to his friend that died due to domestic violence, because when you think about it, back then, a lot of the celebrities, they made conscious music. They not only rapped and sung about sex, but they would rap and sing about spirituality and love and heartache and breakups and stuff. They sung like human beings, and they could relate so much to the human experience. Nowadays, rap is all about being an illusion, being a drug dealer, being a gangster, being a thug, or being a hoochie hoe, or a plot twister, or a scammer. Or, you know, and it's not about real life anymore. And it's so sad how people get caught up in these lyrics and they go out here and live this stuff. And a lot of this stuff ain't real. Now, I will say some of these rappers do be about that gang life and thug life, and the women they be stripping and hoeing too for real. But a lot of that stuff they rap about is not realistic for everybody, and people don't understand that they're believing and following an illusion that's just not real and really leading them down to a path of destruction. Because a lot of this stuff these people are rapping about, it keeps people in bondage. Now I do like Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B, and I like some of the ratchet stuff because it's fun. But at the same time, I'm like, you need to get a job and have a solid career and pay bills and be happy and have friends and have a family and a house and stuff to go to. You can't be hoeing and slutting and everything, dancing and thugging stuff down all the time, and expect to have a full life or a complete life or to have any type of structure or order. And it just seems like music is not the way it was back then, where it was realistic and relatable and you could actually almost live by it. Because when it came to 90s kids and stuff, a lot of us could look up to the people we listened to and heard on the radio and watched on TV because they told our stories and they gave us plans and they gave us, ideas, especially we couldn't get that at home. So that's that part. Now with Dino, I could really see him going down the neo soul path and like that classical, heartfelt R&B that was real thick and popular, in the early 2000s. Hip hop was one because he could rap and he had that swag about him. That was the thing about Dino. Dino was so multifaceted. Like he could be sexy and sensual, and he could be heartfelt and savvy, and then he could be like this bona fide thug, I want to take your clothes off, spread your legs, and all of that. Like he could just be so versatile. But then he also could have went in the gospel as well. Because back then, especially with the black church, they was a little touchy feely about including hip hop sounds and whatnot. And see, Kirk Franklin, he broke the mold with that, which is what made him so popular and so different in the late 90s. Well, not just late 90s, but in the early 90s. And then you had like the Sounds of Blackness and all these other people who came in through the mix of that new age, hip hop, R&B sound of gospel. Because the youth at the time, they respected their elders, but they wanted to know how could God work for them. Because, when you young, you want to have fun, you want to have sex, you want to do what you want to do. But at the same time, the elders and our parents, they taught us about heaven and hell. Because I remember growing up, they would teach us to say our prayers before going to bed, because you never know if you're going to wake up the next day. They would teach us about being grateful and hugging people and telling people that we love them, because you never know what's going to happen. So back then they put the fear of God in us, but they also let us know that there is, death after this, and that's something you can't come back from, and there is a heaven and a hell where you can be rewarded or punished for the life that you live. Except young people, it's like we got the message, but we want to know how to convey it. But we also want to know how can we stick and stay in church and be interested enough to take this stuff into consideration and use in our daily lives. So you have people like the Soundness of Blackness and Kirk Franklin, as well as other people that mixed in those hip hop and rock and R&B and pop things to make it relatable to young people, so that young people could not only be accepted and feel loved, but also be saved. So I felt like Dino, with him having that soulfulness and that creativity and that just love of God in his heart, but also that that sexiness and that sensuality and whatnot that could relate to secular people. I feel like he could have made it work with gospel as well, because I could see him being like a deacon, pastor, minister. I could hear that all in his voice, like the minister, deacon, pastor. you know, because he had it all, and I felt like he could have went down that road as well. And I honestly, and even hearing Dino's songs on his solo projects, and even hearing Dino's sounds and just his different ways of using his voice and his talents, he could have did a lot more movies than he did, because when he was with Htown, they were on two soundtracks. And see, back then in the 90s, if you was in a movie soundtrack, you was hot, because movie soundtracks back then, especially in black cinema, was a big thing, because soundtracks is about as good as albums. So if you made it on a movie album, you were big. You were like the hottest thing out. I mean, on the movie soundtrack, you were big and you were like the hottest thing out, especially not only in movies, but if you were asked to perform on like TV shows or like be like the interlude and like a sitcom and stuff, you were big. The only two soundtracks Htown was on was Above the Rim with Tupac and A Thin Line Between Love and Hate. And actually, Martin Lawrence actually asked Htown to sing the theme song. I mean, to sing the theme song for that movie. And they included, you know, Shirley Murdoch. Shirley Murdoch was wonderful back then in the 80s, especially with her song As We Lay. And there was another song. Okay, it goes like do 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 do. My world came to an end. Then you came back again. Now I know there is no way I can go on without you.